Good evening. This is Professor Saifur Rahman from Virginia Tech. I am the director of the Virginia Tech Advanced Research Institute, and I was the president of IEEE Power and Energy Society for 2 years, 2018, 2019. It's my pleasure to come before you to talk about the webinar called Role of Smart Grid in Facilitating Integration of Renewables. We'll talk about that, what is smart grid and all that. So I've been to Amman many times and not in the last few years. I enjoyed the city, and I'm sure you are all in Amman or surrounding countries. So hopefully this will be useful information for you. So now, going forward, let's talk about smart grid first. What is a smart grid? Smart grid is a concept with many elements where you can monitor and control each element in the chain of generation, transmission, distribution, and end use, which allow electricity to flow from point A to point B more efficient way. So this is the key word. Smart grid is a concept. It is a target that you do. It's not all done at one go. So there is transmission, there is generation, there is distribution, and your load at your home and building. That's where smart grid starts. Now, if we talk about the word grid, grid means network. This is a typical transmission grid, which has been there for many years. There is transmission grid, water supply grid, telecom grid, gas network, gas supply grid, and the like. In the case of electric power system, the power grid is quite smart already. In many electronic devices like fax devices, PMU devices, which make the grid smart. It's done. Then the issue is, where is the problem then? Well, before I go there, I have to ask the question, what is the motivation for a smart grid? Meaning why you want to do smart grid to begin with. Because we want to make the grid smarter, safer, reliable, and more cost-effective by using advanced sensors, communication technologies, and distributed computing. Let me take a minute to explain these. First of all, I show in red writing here, cost-effective. I did not say smart grid is cheap. It is very expensive, but it is cost-effective because we can do more things with it. And I'll get back to that in a few seconds. We're using various levels of sensors. PMU is a sensor, for example, to sense the grid condition. We have to use two-way communication using wireless technologies, using LoRa technologies, many other things. And we should do some local computing. That is what I mean by distributed computing. Okay, that's the motivation. All right, now, this is my way of explaining the normal grid and the smart grid. You all know how a smartphone looks like, what it can do for you. Somebody might say a phone is a phone. You pick up the phone, dial the number, and talk. That's the black phone's job. It did that for 100 years. Now we have moved to smartphone. Why you moved to smartphone is not because it's cheaper. It's very expensive. In fact, the black phone on the left costs us $15 US, 15 US. The smartphone, the iPhone 11, cost me $1,200. One is 15, one is 1,200. Difference 800 times more expensive, 800 times. Why I do this? Well, the smartphone, like you do today, can do Facebook. The black phone cannot do Facebook. Smartphone can do Telegram, WhatsApp, email, internet, communications, camera, watch, word processing, spreadsheet, all of that can be done on that little phone. That's like a computer. That's the difference. If you want to do more things with the same device, if you spend more money because it gives you more service. The smartphone gives you more value than a regular phone, which is used only to make phone calls. That is why we spend the money to get more value, more services, more opportunities with the same device. We just call it still we don't call iPhone a computer, we call it phone. Don't call it a computer, right? You have a Google phone, it's just a phone, but it's more like a computer. That's the difference between a smart grid and a normal grid. Okay, now what are then the starting and end points of the smart grid? Where does it start? Where does it end? Smart grid, the way I define it, begins at the power station, power plant. Then the power, electricity comes from the power plant through the transmission line to your city distribution network. From the distribution network comes to the building, homes, and end-use appliances. Therefore, I see here a smart grid starts at the generator and ends at the refrigerator. Just keep that in mind. That is the scale of smart grid all the way. It can do many different things like controlling your refrigerator, for example. The old grid could not control your refrigerator because it did not see where is the refrigerator in the house. See meaning not with the eye, electrically it can see it now. That's the scope of the smart grid. Okay, now to make the smart grid work, you need 4 building blocks. On the top is the technology, smart meters, smart network, smart transformers, smart switching that exists today. All of that you can buy today, even in Jordan. Then you need standards to make all those technologies work together. What do I mean by this? Many companies like Siemens, ABB, GE, then Schneider make components for smart grid. If there is no standard, then a GE meter cannot talk to a GE switching circuit. I mean, the G meter cannot talk to a Siemens switching circuit. So we have built standards to make sure components, equipment from different vendors can talk to each other. That's the standards part. Third is rules and regulations, or rates and regulations. In order for smart grid to be functional, you have to have different prices for electricity for different times of the day. Meaning, if the electricity is very expensive at 3 p.m. compared to 3 a.m., then people will be careful and try to reduce the use of electricity at 3 p.m. and use more at 3 a.m. Maybe do more storage. That's called rate and regulation. That is important. For smart grid to be practical, the local power company, local government must have different rates for different times of electricity usage. Done. Finally, the bottom box, the bottom bar, consumer awareness and education. Very important. You can give the technology, give the standards, give the rates to everybody, but if they do not know what that means, then they are not interested. For example, if you want to build a smart grid with smart meters to begin with, smart meters cost about $200 in the US deployed. Not just the meter itself, other infrastructure that goes with the meter so you can communicate with the meter in two-way fashion. All that money has to come from the customer in the long run. The customer is not willing to pay extra money unless they see extra benefits. That's what we mean by consumer awareness. So that is important. That is not done all the way, still being worked on in the US and many countries. Okay, that's the building blocks. Now, how has the grid evolved over time? The picture on the top, I call before smart grid, has traditional power system, power plant generator on the left, step-up transformer to raise the voltage from the power station to the transmission line. Then that power goes across long distances from the high voltage through the high voltage transmission line. Then it comes to your neighborhood substation, step down transformer, voltage goes down, that goes to your street, your neighborhood, your home, your building, all of that. That's the normal grid going on for over 100 years. The one that is new, and I'm talking about a smart grid, I say after smart grid, before smart grid and after smart grid. This allows two-way power flow. What do I mean by two-way power flow? You saw in the first picture, power flows from the power plant to your home. That's it, one way. Now, if you look at the picture, the lower half of this page, you got battery, rooftop solar, wind turbine, storage, rooftop PV, photovoltaics. Then all these, the wind, the solar, the battery, are capable of sending power back to the grid. That is why you need two-way communication. Now look at this picture. This is what I call the building block or components of the smart grid. What is a component? I call them intelligent, interconnected set of microgrids. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 microgrids here. They are forming a smart grid for a power company. If you look at the center of the page, the picture showing 4 homes, all of them have rooftop solar, and you got a base station to communicate between these homes, asking how much electricity being produced, how much is being used, how much can be stored, all of that. This also, one of the homes has electric vehicle as well, which can store energy and use it during off-peak or peak hours. Anyway, there's a microgrid. There are many microgrids here, 4 of them. At the same time, on the lower right-hand side, you have a bulk power plant, which will send power from the power station to the grid. So all of that is working together. All right. So what is then an explanation for this smart grid? Smart grid merges power flow with information flow. Look at this picture. This is what we call power, electricity infrastructure. Power station on the left, long step-up transformer, long distance transmission line, distribution substation, receiving station, distribution substation, bringing power to your neighborhood, which is the bottom horizon line that is horizontal. That goes to, on the left, some photovoltaics, batteries, micro turbine on the left. In the middle, you got some factory, commercial building, your homes, all of that is your user side, load side. That's what you call a typical electric power infrastructure. Now we're putting a communication or information infrastructure on top of this power infrastructure, the red lines. You'll also notice here, these red lines have arrows both ways, up and down or left and right. That's because the information infrastructure has to work both ways, meaning sending information from the power station to the home or building and receiving information data back from the building, home to the substation and then to the power station for control center. That's the two-way communication, fine. Now, that is the history, smart grid, all of that. So why is that important? That's called about the role of renewables. Historically, we had power station, transmission line, distribution network, and power comes to my building. It's done. Now it's no longer the case. We have wind turbines, windmills producing power and sending back to the grid. We have rooftop solar, like in this picture in Japan. We also have electric cars, which can either use electricity or produce stored energy, send it back to the grid. Okay, fine. So what then are the issues with distributed generation? We know wind and solar, even though they're free, but they're intermittent, meaning they are not available always. Hydro is also free, but hydro is space limited. You can put a solar panel on the roof of a building in Amman, no problem, but you can't put a hydro plant in Amman. It doesn't exist. You have the river on the west bank and east bank on the Jordan side, but that's not in the city. So again, resource can be free, but not always usable where you are. We'll see how we can manage that. Okay, let's talk about wind energy first. This is a typical data for a power company in the US, Bonneville Power Administration, BPA, which is the northwestern part of the United States. I'm going to show you 4 different seasons and the shape of wind power and shape of power demand in both or all 4 seasons. So here the blue line represents the load for the power company, average load for the month of January. You see 2 peaks. US winter load, January, typically 2 peaks. One in the morning about 7, 8 o'clock, and one in the afternoon, evening about 7 to 8 p.m. Okay, this is the demand, the blue lines. The red line is your supply, wind power. If you were to use only wind power to serve your load, that will not work. You can tell. The demand is high in the morning, supply is low. Midday demand is low, supply is high. So we got to use storage to make it work. That's one thought to keep in mind. Number 2, from January, I go to April, which is springtime in the US, northwestern US. Again, double peak, but you can see early morning hours. Wind is very strong, no problem. But by 2 p.m., wind has gone down and the demand is high, cannot be matched. That's a challenge. Number 3 is summertime, July. For some reason, in the northwestern US, the wind power stays low in the morning time. It's a morning close to 50 to 100 megawatt in this case. And load is very high. Typically, summer load is single peak in the US, broad single peak. That means they don't match. Let's one more. October, fall or autumn data, again, double peak. You have high supply in the morning till about 2, 3 p.m., then it drops out. So you are able to match the morning peak quite well because wind output was high, but you cannot match the evening peak, wind output is low. Again, this is the reason we are looking at smart grids. Okay, some more data. That was the daily variation. This is short-term variation, 1 minute. This data comes from a 100 megawatt wind farm in Texas, data from 2008. That shows about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, the wind output dropped from 125, 30 to about 80 some megawatts. So 43.7 megawatt drop in 1 minute. That's hard to work with because your supply is so diversified. One example. Second example, again, same wind farm in Texas. Here is more serious issue from midnight to about 6 a.m. is flat, very, very nice wind output. Then I look at the data for following 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, the power dropped by 113 megawatts out of 150. Big change, almost 80%. Then after an hour or 2 hours, in 10 minutes, the power went up by 106 megawatts. If you have that much fluctuation, you cannot run a system. Good, let's move on. Another data for wind in Texas again, 2008, January 1, January 2. I showed this picture to explain to you. You could say, look at this picture. This is fine, oscillations happen. You will put batteries to take care of it. It's possible to put batteries. The batteries are not cheap. They're expensive and take space to run. That is why I would not recommend buying or supplying too many batteries. For this case in Texas, in January, when the wind power output on the left side screen, 0 in January, the peak at midnight was 2,200. By 11 a.m., it became 200 or less. Stays under 1,000 megawatt for the rest of the day, rest of the morning. Following day at about midnight, hour 24, you see the demand is being met by wind only. But again, are you going to put batteries to fill up this gap, the gap of the white space? No, that's very expensive. Okay, look at this. Next 2 days, 3rd and 4th of January, wind has picked up and your output is fine. That means on these days, 3rd and 4th of January, you will not need any wind power because you are not selling anything. Then the question remains, you have batteries sitting there, get used. Keep that in mind as we discuss further. Now, from wind, let's go to solar photovoltaics. That's the building where I work at Virginia Tech. Rooftop solar, about 6.5 kilowatt system. Look at this. This is in a winter January timeframe. Sunny outside, but no output from the PV inverter because the solar is set up, is there. We don't go to the roof after a snowfall and clear it. We just don't do it. That means even if you got a sunny day like you see here, the solar output will be zero because it is covered with snow. Okay. Some data, 7 days solar PV output in Arlington, Virginia, where I work, day 1 through day 7. I'm showing this to show you that there are good days. Jordan is a good example of sunshine to be strong. You don't need any battery, nothing. That's the output. However, this can happen as well. Different week, again, 7-day week in Virginia. You see, Monday was about 2,000 out of 5,000. Tuesday was 4,800. And then Wednesday, it exceeded 500 some. It's picked up. So anyway, Monday, Tuesday is bad, Wednesday okay, Thursday bad, and so on and so forth. How you deal with it? Well, storage would help. Now this is a daily shape. Even though it's a sunny day, clouds move in, and you see some power drop or supply drop because of the cloud movement. Fine. This is a bad summer day where the cloud is there, but mostly cloudy, not much output. Those are the challenges you have to deal with, just so that you know. Okay, now what are the solutions? You have battery storage. This happens to be a wind farm, battery storage, 200 kilowatt hour battery storage. Then lower left is the pump storage. Lower right is the compressed air energy storage. What is compressed air energy storage? When you have off-peak excess power, you put that in a motor compressor and then throw that compressed air in the salt mine or some closed space. And in peak hours, you can release that compressed air that comes to a generator, turbine generator, and produces electricity because turbines need warm and heated air to run it. So that's the summary for storage. Now, two things here, demand response and demand side management, DSM, the lower half of this picture. DSM means the power company has the right to manage the demand by cutting load off. You have probably heard things like author deployed control, or talk like load shedding, power company controlling your load. That's DSM, demand side management. In this case, I, as the homeowner, give permission to the power company to turn my AC off once a day. That's it, once a day. And that may not be a good time because I may be using that time to have webinars, some children, and scope is interesting. Upper half of the screen called demand response. Demand response is a customer action to control load to meet a certain target. For example, the lower part of the screen, DSM, power company is trying to save 6 or 5 kilowatts by turning my AC off. I will tell the power company, I know you need 5 kilowatt of savings. I'll give it to you, 5 kilowatts, but how I do it is my business. I may want to not run the AC for a few minutes, then may not want to use the electric water heater, may not want to use the electric cooking, may not use the electric ventilation, all of that. I can decide how much we turn on, how much we turn off, and how long they remain on or off. That's the demand response. Okay. As a result, we have to recognize the power system paradigm is changing. Historically, we call demand-driven supply. You forecast the load for next year, next 5 years, next 10 years. Based on that, you decide to build a power plant, which is driven locally. That's the practice we have for over 100 years. The new reality is supply side demand. Your demand is not fixed. Demand can be adjusted by, or in the event, the supply could not be sent from the demand side unit. So here you are saying, I have this load, which is not important for me. I want to follow what is happening in the grid for the whole network, right? If you read this in red lines, demand needs to adjust to meet fluctuating supply with help from storage. That's done. Now I throw in smart grid, provide more power to that building. I didn't quite catch that. To show that. So that's what we call a smart grid ecosystem. If you look at the bottom of the screen, I call it smart grid ecosystem, which looks like this. At the bottom, the yellow circle, smart buildings, intelligent buildings, automation, smart devices, and productive users in that building. Then your university may have more than one buildings. So that's what do we call that smart campus, so that many buildings can be managed from one central location. That goes to smart city, which has many smart campuses, many buildings, and so on and so forth, like you have in Amman. Smart city. That talks to smart grid. The smart grid may have many smart cities, therefore many smart campuses and many smart buildings. That's the setup. Okay, so that's a smart building. You get a single platform to control and monitor smart grid applications and lighting, heating, cooling, water supply, sensor networks, security camera, fire emergency. All of those things are managed by one central controller in a smart building. That's why you call it a smart building. It's a smart building, smart campus, smart city, smart grid. Okay, good. Therefore, if we have many buildings under one central control, you can then manage large number of buildings to absorb fluctuations of the short term. What do you mean by fluctuation of the short term? You have rooftop solar. The cloud is moving in and out. So you have supply shortage. Can you, when the supply is limited, can you, the user of the building, not go to classroom, not turn the AC on for a short time of the day, then you can manage better. So that's what you mean by cumulative benefits. Other thing is, if you have many buildings backing each other up, you don't need as much storage. Why? Suppose a building is isolated just by itself. If you lose, like my building I showed some time back, if you lose solar, I have to back it up. If you have many buildings nearby, for example, if you look at this picture, this picture, right? If I run this building with solar and this happens, output changes, I'm in trouble. But if I can connect all the other buildings in the back you see, they may not have solar and they may have some alternatives to reduce their load. So when I am using solar is down, I can tell my neighboring building, please give me some power. You're not using it because your building is not fully under not full occupancy. So that's what I mean by this item here, call it cumulative benefit of smart building, load building, and therefore because they're helping each other out, you don't need a lot of storage per building. But you have to invest in monitoring and control. Monitoring meaning see what's happening at every building and control their air conditioner, their ventilation fans, their other devices to give you the 6 kilowatt or 6 kilowatt you're using in a smart building here. Okay, so now there are two kinds of renewable generation issue. I say smart versus not too smart, not so smart load control. What do you mean by not smart load control? We here in Virginia have a program by the power company. They will give me a $40 US rebate once a year if I allow them to turn my AC off on a hot summer day when they are short of capacity. That's we call not so smart load and load control. I cannot accept that. My family cannot accept it. So I said, don't turn it off. Change the set point so that we can live in the building. So that's the one example. You have to take the storage into play, but how much storage you need will depend on how much load you can control. And finally, every storage at every rooftop solar has to have every rooftop solar has to have backup, and backup can be managed by inverters. Now, this is my last slide. As you may know, some of you may be IEEE members. I'm running for IEEE president, and I have this website, this srahman.org. If I click here, you'll go there. Again, there are 3 candidates for this position. I'm one of the 3. And there are 2 others, Professor Ray Liu and Professor Ramesh. They're running for the same job. So if you go here to this, my website, which is this, you'll see the same building. You see a video of my lecture there, and you can go to page called webinars on this site. And from that page, you can see other webinars I've given in the last few days, and they are recorded versions. All of it is there. If you need to know more, go to my website, srahman.org, and get some more information. So I will then leave you here and stop the screen sharing so you can ask questions or write comments in the chat box. Okay. So any questions, comments? You can type a question on the chat box on the right-hand side. I'll read it, and then I will try to respond. Okay, I'm here. Okay, no questions? Again, let me add to what I have just said. You have transformer, transmission line, distribution line, smart meter, generation station. All of those can be connected to a smart grid and run the system more efficiently. So if there is no more question, I would like to disconnect, but you have my email address, and I would like to request, since you have recorded this on Facebook Live, you can store it there. You'll get a link to share with other people who could not join today. They can see the recording on Facebook. And also, I would like to have the recorded version, the link from Facebook, give it to me so I can show my students what I said in this lecture in Jordan. Okay, so if it's okay with you, I will stop my meeting now. Okay, no more questions? So I'm going to leave the meeting. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.